hey. Okay. Actually, I wanted to do it actually like this. I wanted to do one of those videos where the person's just like holding a mic, you know? Have you seen those videos on YouTube where someone's just like holding a mic? One other thing I wanted to talk about today was the way that people talk about mental health on YouTube. So I did a deep dive. I did a bunch of live streams over the course of quite a while, months. I did like 5 or 6. I had 7. I think some got cut, some got lost. Some just like changed, they morphed. Some disintegrated. Some just stayed relatively the same. And I wanted to present to you now a sort of compilation and a roundup, so to speak, of the way YouTube talks about different aspects of mental health. Now, this isn't very systematic. It's a little sort of ramshackle or slapdash. You could say, and people are going to be saying that in the comments. I can already see it right now. The comments, ramshackle, slapdash. But the point is, I took the time to do this because I think some valuable insights are really shared on YouTube. And I enjoyed sort of finding those in these videos that I watched, and then also critiquing parts that I thought could be improved. And I know as a video maker myself, you can check out my main channel. This is the side channel. This is like probably the most involved video yet on the side channel, if you don't count the Hans Niemann lawsuit. But yeah, so, I do make videos and I understand you always come up short. You always make errors. So I like trying to sort of look for those too, because that's the other side of the coin. First video on the menu. Wow, it's so cool to hold the mic like this. Did you notice I was doing that? First video on the menu tonight is a video by Jacob Geller about AI sort of based apps to help with your mental health. It was a really, really good video, and so there's not like a ton of criticism, but I did resonate with a lot of what he talked about how these apps can sort of fill a gap with accessibility, but they do it in a kind of distorted way. Anyways, so let's check out some of the highlights here, and then we'll move on to some other sort of little bit stranger stuff. Let's just start with this. Is anyone else interested in automated therapy? So I'm a therapist. I do therapy. I just did therapy today. I do therapy 5 days a week. I talk to people about their life. I try to help as best I can. It's challenging and interesting work, and I enjoy it.
A few months ago, I did something I doubt any therapist would recommend. I went onto the App Store and downloaded 5 different therapy programs that all promised, in one way or another, to help me fix whatever's going on up here.
Why would no therapist recommend? Okay, whatever. It's just a hook for the video. Oh, I love these types of plants. His look is fucking dope. His beard is making me miss my beard.
While I engaged as fully as I could with each of the apps I downloaded, I can't deny I started this project with a good dose of skepticism about how artificially intelligent and/or effective any of these things could be. But there is also the flip side of this, which is I live in the United States of America.
Okay, I really don't want to ignore that point too. Like, the accessibility of therapy is an enormous problem in the US.
Third on the list is Mood Mission, which, true to the name, provides missions or tasks for you to complete based on your current emotional state. It's also based in cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. Then there's Bloom, the last CBT-based app that promises to help me learn new self-care practices to cultivate more joy, happiness, and positivity in my life.
I mean, so is confidentiality a thing? Or, because that's where the dystopian shit really gets to be a problem. Like, to have it be, on the one hand, like, we're offering something akin to therapy, but on the other hand, to have like, oh, our responsibilities are not akin to therapy. We don't have to worry about confidentiality. Yeah, so selling a user's data for these apps, I mean, obviously unethical. Yeah.
Honestly, according to people's bios on dating apps, going to therapy might be the single most attractive thing you could do. But even as...
Yeah, I see those on dating apps sometimes, and I have to stop myself from being like, oh, you want someone who goes to therapy? I go there 5 days a week. And I sit in the other chair.
The first app I'd use every day is basically a diary app with a smidge of mood tracking thrown in. It provides you with a sort of inspirational Mad Libs and then a more open-ended section where you report on how you're feeling at the moment. I am feeling pretty good about work, and I am feeling happy about this. The structure of them never really quite made sense to me.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I get it. Like, everyone wants to make an app, right? So it's like, sure, that's a place to start. That looks like a high school project or like a college project or something. Like, not helpful though. I mean, it would be better help for someone to sit in silence for 20 minutes than to do that, or to literally take a piece of paper and smash a pencil into it just over and over. That would be more helpful to that person's mental health than doing this.
Unimportant to the Reflectly experience, and yet the worst thing about it is its inspirational quotes.
Is that a Pablo Picasso quote saying everything you can imagine is real? I don't know that Pablo Picasso is like the model like mental health guy. Like, you may have to fight a battle more than once to win it. What? That's not even like poetically phrased. Like, what? Margaret Thatcher? No way, dude. That's a Margaret Thatcher quote? Oh my God. You have Pablo Picasso and Margaret Thatcher as your fucking mental health quotes. Especially Margaret Thatcher. Can you imagine your fucking therapy app showing you a Margaret Thatcher quote?
Hilariously, one of the premium features is unlimited inspirational quotes, which is some of the most egregious. If you choose the activity, I'd like to reframe depressed thoughts, Uper will tell you, very good choice. I love that you're open to working on reframing depressed thoughts. And then it gives you 3 choices of what to say. Thanks, Uper, it's important to me, or I need it. If you're observant, you might notice something about these 3 responses.
They're the same.
Which is they're exactly the same thing. Its graph shows that my depression and anxiety scores have gone down, which, nice, I guess.
Congrats, Jacob. I'm really happy for you. I'm so glad you're doing better. Clearly. I mean, I would like to know how many, what percent of the time do the user-facing anxiety and depression scores go up in the Uber app? That is a question I would not mind having the answer to. But I will say congratulations, Jacob, on the... oh my gosh, you're borderline 0 anxiety and depression. So, wow. I mean, I just want to say as like an aside, or like to be clear, I'm a huge believer in the idea of self-help. I mean, I'm just not a huge fan of the most famous self-help people because, obviously. But I became a therapist because I fucking love thinking about how to feel better and make my life better. So much of my art for years, from high school to college and after, like, is based around like trying to improve myself as a person and like live the best life possible and understand life and blah, blah, blah. It's like, self-help is the intersection of like philosophy and psychology and so many other things, but especially those. So I really believe everyone should try to open up their ability to improve themselves and think about their own problems. I really believe like we're capable of a lot in how we manage our own emotions and our lives, and most people probably haven't unlocked their full potential in terms of like using their mind and their brain to have the types of thoughts and feelings in the types of ways that are most beneficial to them to fulfill their wants and needs is sort of how I would understand mental health.
Unlike Uber, this assistant is more than text. She has a full 3D body. Her name is Care, and she's weird as hell.
Are you fucking kidding me, dude? She's fucking naked?
Hi there, I'm Care. I'm here to guide you on your journey of self-discovery and self-expansion.
So we are going to come back to this video on the next stream, so let's check it out.
Finding out how a lifetime of ingrained memories and emotions affect our behavior today is just not something a program can do. But what they can do is if-then statements. If-then is one of the main tools of CBT, and it's also how computer programming works. To get better, to lower the depression number, people just need to rework their internal if-thens into something more productive.
No.
Rather than figuring out how to make a computer therapist act more like a human, automated therapy has instead chosen the psychological approach that makes a human most resemble a computer. Reprogram your mind. Stop thinking about that anxiety. Start operating like a well-oiled machine. In a traditional therapeutic scenario, CBT would be a tool of the therapist, one of many.
Yeah.
But in the binary world of apps and code, this nuance is lost.
Such a good in-depth look at this.
The demand for therapy is at an all-time high, and instead of reducing its instigating factors, it's simply been turned into another market. CBT is relatively easily automated, scalable without an equal increase in providers, and doesn't present any threat to the status quo. It might not be the perfect approach for you, but it's the perfect solution to your problems according to your boss.
It doesn't present any threat to the status quo, CBT. Okay, well, I mean, I don't know if I fully agree. I guess it has to be status quo based. I don't know. I guess you're using CBT to try to help someone change their thought and behavior pattern, but what if that behavior pattern is being changed in a way that is less amenable to the status quo? I mean, is that really impossible in therapy? I'm not sure. I do think there's probably a huge influence in that way, of course, of like enforcing a status quo in a nonverbal sort of way, but I don't know. Maybe I just have a problem with extreme statements or something.
I hadn't even finished my first session with Uber before it came to me with a request. One more thing, it said, like a friend who had been wondering when to bring this up. Let's hear it, I said, not unkindly. One of my goals is to help everyone on the planet have access to mental health support, it screamed, eyes flashing red. Every time we talk, I discover things that have the potential to help everyone live happier lives. It's asking for data. That's what's happening. Little baby Uber just wants to make everyone on the planet happy, and it needs my data in order to do that.
The two options are that's a great cause and okay. Are you interested in letting me share your anonymous data with researchers to improve mental health?
Treasure the air and treasure each other.
Yeah.
And work towards a world where we can provide for everyone the things that cannot be provided by a machine.
Very well done. Amazing video, Jacob Geller. Wow, so that was pretty interesting. I'm still here holding the mic. I think we all kind of enjoyed that, you know. Jacob Geller makes amazing videos, very in-depth, and I enjoyed watching it, reacting to it, responding to it. Next up, we're going to watch a completely different video. So if the apps didn't do it for you, and if Jacob Geller's sort of like grounded humanistic approach didn't do it for you, how about something much more, I was going to say up in the clouds, and I think I hear an airplane or something. How about something just in a different maybe dimension? I don't know this creator. I've never watched their videos before. I forget how I found this. I'm a little unsure of what to expect here, not knowing too much about the subject or the creator. But I'm excited to see, and I think it will be a very different take on mental health than we were just checking out with Jacob Geller's video. So let's see.
This video, I'm going to be sharing with you 5th dimensional habits that will raise your vibration instantly. These are going to be things that when you start to apply in your life, you start to perceive of more of the 5th dimension.
Okay, so I'll be honest, I don't even know what that means, but I'm sure he's going to explain.
Welcome back to another video. My name's Aaron, and I help people expand their consciousness. Now in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you that of understanding 5th dimensional energy, understanding these habits that if you start to do now will allow you to let go of the lower vibrational states, lower vibrational things that are holding you down so that you start to exist in a higher state of consciousness.
I'm digging those good vibrations.
And if you want to know the benefits of this, the first benefit is that you're literally going to be feeling better. You're going to be feeling in a...
Okay. So the first thing I said when watching this video we were just watching is, are these apps that he discusses going to oversell? Because that's the big question with self-help.
You're going to relate to people in a more connective way. This is about, it's more of like an experience that you have when you start to apply these habits than just some intellectual idea was like, well, I am more loving now. It's like, no, I'm more loving now. Whisper like this, you can feel it more. But this is about understanding fifth.
I don't like this guy's vibration.
Now, what is the fifth dimension? What is the fourth dimension? What's the third dimension? These are all questions you might be asking yourself right now.
What is a dimension?
In order to understand these, let's first off understand, when we talk about these dimensions, it doesn't necessarily mean that these dimensions are different places. I mean, sometimes it can be, but in general, what I'm talking about here is a shift in consciousness where we, in our daily lives, can be embodying a quote-unquote third dimensional level of consciousness, sometimes a fourth dimensional level of consciousness, or sometimes a fifth dimensional level.
Oh, God. I didn't realize he meant like lower and higher vibration to be linked up to the numerical dimensions. Jesus Christ, of course.
Level of consciousness, depending on our energy state and depending on how we are relating to the world. Now, in general, I'm going to share with you some things. We're going to go down the rabbit hole a little bit. This rabbit hole is going to take us a little bit further down, so just stay with me with this. This is about understanding, first off, why are you here right now? Why are you on earth right now? Because at a grander level, you are an immortal spiritual being that is having a temporary human experience. This is something that many teachings around the world have known for thousands of years, and it is one of the main purposes of our life is to remember that we are not just the ego structure.
How does this man have 1.4 million subs? Actually, this man could not exist without having 1.4 million subs. Like, if you look at his demeanor and the way he's expressing himself, everything about this screams, Jesus fucking Christ, I can't believe I have 1.4 million subs. How do I try to justify this with some all-embracing philosophical project? And look, he is literally saying all the cultures around the world, or like many cultures around the world, have understood for a long time that we are a spiritual being in a temporary physical form. And I mean, he uses the word they've known that. It's not that they've known that, they've believed that. I mean, it depends on how you define knowledge, but it's the very typical cookie cutter sort of like interpretation of like, I guess, the Bhagavad Gita and, you know, whatever else. Like, yeah, that's true. That's a very common spiritual understanding. His presentation of the idea leaves something to be desired, because I feel like I'm being like pelleted with like a bunch of different pellets of information.
And the ego structure wants proof of everything. The ego structure wants to say, well, this is real.
Something's going on.
The ego structure wants to say, well, this is real and that is not real. And the ego wants to measure everything. But when you start to more so embrace your spiritual self and you start to more so understand that you are a spiritual being, that's when your whole entire life will change. So in a way...
Anyways, this video is from 4 years ago, just to be clear. I don't know what this guy's up to nowadays. Looks like his hair is longer. Unleash attractive AF energy by maintaining... Oh no, is he a red pill guy? Oh man, that's a red pill thing when you talk about your frame.
Earth is a form of game. It is a game to be here. And part of the game is for us to remember who we are, because this is a temporary human experience. Now imagine you're playing a video game, and in that video game, you know the whole entire time it's a game, and you just start messing stuff up because you just know it's a game. Well, the reason that when we come to Earth, we forget who we are is so that we think it is real.
Why do I feel like he's about to be like, and this is why I cheated on my ex?
Because if you're just playing the game Sims, and you got someone that's like inside the living room, and you make them go eat some Wheaties, and then you make them go do this, you don't take that as serious as if it really does have an effect on you. And there really are consequences of cause and effect. So the idea is that when we come here, we...
Sir, do you not believe that there are consequences for your actions? Or what is going on here?
So when we realize that, we're like, okay, well, how am I going to change my thoughts? How am I going to change my emotions? How am I going to change my focus? Because then you change your life. Because your thoughts, your beliefs are creating reality. So it's about understanding that, first off, so far what I'm trying to show you is that you're an immortal spiritual being. You come from higher dimensional states of consciousness.
But you're not showing me that. You're telling me that. And that is why this could be much better written.
You are awake to this multidimensional aspect of you that is not limited by the 5 senses. And that is a part of you as well. And you're connected even there right now. It's just that we don't remember it, because you can't if you remember 2 or 3 things at once, your brain would go crazy.
What?
Like if you were like, oh, I remember what I'm having over there, over here. But remember, as above, so below. Right now, we are here on the planet, and many, many, many people, billions of people have decided to be here right now because of this shift in vibrational state of consciousness that is happening.
I just want to say for the record, I did not decide to be here. Let me get that, hold on, let me get that very clear on the record. I did not decide to be born. I don't know about everyone else. I did not decide to be born. No one asked my agreement in that. I just want to make that very clear.
Now, how do I know this? Read work from Dolores Cannon. She has 17 books out that is on that of understanding.
Okay, I don't know who Dolores Cannon is, so I can't speak to that author that he's citing, but why do you know the exact number of books she has out? What? 17 is such a specific number.
People, what she did is she's a hypnotherapist that was able to get people to the deepest levels of brainwave activity where they were in this hypnotic state to where their higher selves would come through. And their higher selves, they could then ask any question. It's called QHHT, Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique.
Okay, well, does that have lasting benefits?
These people would ask any questions. Why did this person incarnate at this time? What is it like in, this reality? Or what is, what happens after death? All of these things have been brought
Who answers?
through in thousands and thousands of transcripts through thousands and thousands of different people all around the world, and there's these books that show that. And one of the consistent things that people say is that they came here because right now this is the place to be.
I mean, I've read books about hypnosis, and I remember one I read where they tried very hard to make sure people weren't biased, like they were doing past life regression, and they were trying to make it so they could see if everybody thought they were Cleopatra and, King blah, 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 when they did past life regression. Because that would prove, no, not everyone was a fucking king. You're just, imagining this. You know what I mean? Not that you could ever prove that it was genuine past life regression, but if you could point out a clear bias like that, it would definitely cast a serious skepticism. According to the book I read at that time, they did, I think, a little over 1,000 past life regressions. It was this one psychologist. I forget what her name was. They didn't find that everybody, imagined they were royalty. And according to this book, it seemed like people did have some... She even tried to see if people could, accurately describe, the dress and, the other details of the times.
Right now, there's a shift in consciousness happening. There's a shift in consciousness from 3D consciousness into 5D consciousness. I say, what about 4D? Actually, right now, we are more in 4D consciousness than anything. 3D consciousness was maybe 50, 60 years ago. Honestly, and also, when we talk about time, it all kind of collapses. It all kind of exists now. 4D.
What?
You can think of more as the dream state and time. 4th dimension kind of is time. Now, what we are doing is...
I get that the 4th dimension is time. That's what I've always thought the 4th dimension was. 1 dimension is a line, right? 2 dimensions is a face. 3 dimensions is a shape. And then you figure 4 dimensions, the 4th one is time, right? I don't know. I'm not an expert. This is not something I know about. Yeah, so anyways, my understanding is, 4th dimension is time. But how is that helping me?
We're going through, and think of the 3rd dimension as duality. We come to Earth to learn duality.
We come to Earth to learn duality? You don't seem so sure of that, man. My answer is we come to Earth as a function of biological reproduction and the emergent phenomenon of human consciousness. And we come to Earth with no say and spirituality is still real and valid, but it doesn't have to mean that there's this fucking novel-esque system of soul economics.
3D type stuff. War going on. That would be a 3D idea. It's me versus you. But if me versus you understood that you are a reflection of me, you would look at each other and go, you want to fight? And you'd be like, wait, why are we fighting? At a greater level.
I feel like this doesn't take into account real, actual historical material reality. That's the problem with certain spiritual approaches to life. I might consider myself a spiritual person. I'm probably I'm pretty spiritual, like for someone who's not religious. But for me, it's always grounded in just like practical sort of mindset. I don't know. It's grounded in Occam's razor, I guess. That's sort of my spirituality.
We give so much importance to race and the culture we came from and all of these things, and those can be beautiful things because they can be unique. But when we emphasize how different we are and we attribute a meaning to it as this is great and this isn't great, that's when we start to teeter these scales. Because at a greater level, we are infinite spiritual beings that cannot be defined by the color of our skin.
Oh my God. I literally think he just solved racism. Someone let the newspaper know.
But 3D idea is you are this color, I am this color, this is good, this is bad. You talk about segregation back in the early days here.
The early days here?
You talk about segregation back in the early days here. Actually, not too long ago. That's segregation. That is a 3D concept. The idea is we're all connected. And these, just like you would wear certain clothes and you wouldn't look to other people and be like, you are your clothes. But we go around pointing out people's clothes all the time. We're like, oh, look at what they're wearing. But this is a temporary experience we're having. And many of us have been many different shades throughout we're immortal spiritual beings. We've lived many, many, many lives.
Okay, is he comparing race to clothes?
Because literally everything that you perceive of in your life is an extension of you.
Oh, fuck.
We just think that while we're here, this is my ego, this is who I am. In actuality, everything is an extension of us.
Yeah, and the word you want to look up, just so you know, Aaron, is solipsism. Okay, so solipsism is the view or theory that the self is all that can be known to exist. And it's gone up over time. So you want to look that up because what you're talking about is solipsism.
What we experience in our life is there to show us something. Even if it's to show us what we're not, it's to show us something. Now, fifth dimensional habits is about understanding this connection out of duality, out of identification with thoughts, and into that of our heart. You see, the mind is polarized. Left brain, right brain, logic, intuition. However, the heart is a singular point of focus.
It has a fucking left and right ventricle.
But a fifth dimensional habit that you can begin to adopt is simply learning to observe the 3D. Observe the 3D. Observe duality. How do you do that? By just looking at it and not labeling it, and by letting it be there. Some people are like, oh, the government, oh, this, oh, that. The more that we focus on the resistance of it, the more resistance of it we create.
So he is preaching this sort of like white man apolitical thing, which like that used to be honestly, this was my philosophy probably when I was like 19. I didn't say it like this, but probably this was a good similarity to my philosophy without the exact same spiritual jargon. Definitely that sort of like apolitical, like, dude, I'm a relatively handsome white man. Like, why should I understand? You know, like you're not thinking this consciously, but like privilege as like a white man makes it so that you think that like, oh, everybody should just like be apolitical. And then you realize like, oh, no. Your solipsism is connected to the lack of understanding that other people's material experience is completely different from yours.
So you'd be like, yes, the government does this and the back behind the government, whatever. Just observe it and acknowledge it for what it is. It's just one experience. It's one way of interpreting the world.
So does this dude like go to protests and he's like, no more 3D policies? Or does he just not do anything?
Now, even if I show you this scale of consciousness right here that I share in a lot of my videos, just...
Oh, man, dude. Why is acceptance 350 and courage is 200? You ranked these things that aren't even in the same category. These are just completely different categories of...
I'll just use this as an analogy as well for you to look at.
And then they're all fear or love. Oh my god. Oh my god. Okay, we have to end the stream tonight by watching that Donnie Darko scene. Okay, let's check this out.
As you can see, the lifeline is divided into two polar extremes, fear and love.
Things aren't that simple.
The lifeline is divided that way.
Well, life isn't that simple. I mean, who cares if Ling Ling returns the
Young Seth Rogen, what up?
wallet and keeps the money? Has nothing to do with either fear or love.
Fear and love are the deepest of human emotions.
Okay, but you're not listening to me. There are other things that need to be taken into account here, like the whole spectrum of human emotion.
So that's what I think of these types of schemes that people come up with to basically try to understand the world. Wow. So yeah, that was 15 minutes watching a very strange and bizarre video. But what if I told you that we could spend another 15 minutes watching a way more strange and bizarre video? Because this is the type of video, the one I'm about to show you, I genuinely don't understand like how this gets published, and I still don't really understand what's going on, but check this out. Okay, so let's learn some psychology tricks. I'm a therapist, so I don't know whether these are gonna be things I know or don't know or agree with or don't agree with, but we will find out together. And then I will decide whether I wanna click thumbs up or thumbs down, or subscribe or report.
30 psychology tricks that work on everyone. Number 30, be taken more seriously.
If you want people to take your words more seriously, every time you tell someone something, say that your father taught you it.
Because people
Oh my god. Oh my god. I'm always trying to give the benefit of the doubt to things. Like, legitimately. Like, okay, you know, I could have complained about like several things before the punchline there. But you know, I'm always willing to give the benefit of the doubt. Like, okay, you want to be taken more seriously? Fair enough. That's fair enough. And then the advice, like, what are you going to be talking about with someone where it would make sense to be like, my dad told me that? And then to like often...
Because people tend to believe the advice of parents more than a younger person.
Just because they believe what you're saying more, if that even was true, would that make them take you more seriously? Saying that your dad told you it is the opposite of being treated as like an independent, knowledgeable person. To be taken more seriously, you know, in the way that they're talking about, I guess, give evidence for the things you say.
Rock, paper, scissors champion. If you want to become a champion at rock, paper, scissors, right before playing the game, ask your opponent a random question. Almost always the other person will be confused and will throw out scissors without much thought.
They'll throw out scissors? Are they joking? Because this is funny. Wow, just a lot of people using clinical language in the comments. I guess this is not a joke. Very nice video. I really liked some of these tricks because they are so genuine. Psychology is a very vast field and can be applied in everyday life, and these psychological tricks have only got me even more interested. Okay, that's gotta be the fucking creator's alt account. People don't seem to take it as satire. Okay, it's not satire. But this would be pretty good satire. The question of why we went from how to be taken more seriously to how to be a rock, paper, scissors champion, that question has not gone answered, to say the least. So I guess we just won't consider why these are the first two things we're learning about. But obviously those have equal weight in everybody's lives. I'm pretty sure if you're in a rock, paper, scissors championship, there are probably rules against saying some random shit to your opponent right before you start. Come on, sportsmanship. No one's going to take you seriously if you do that type of shit. And then they're going to choose scissors? How about just developing a skill with the game of rock, paper, scissors so you don't have to resort to that?
They panic in distraction and just throw out scissors. Number 28, the broccoli trick. If you want your kids to eat broccoli, try asking them if they want 5 or 2 stalks of broccoli.
That's legitimately good advice. This is a very good parenting trick. You have to like give 2 options or more that are like all generally good, so kids feel a sense of agency, like they're choosing something, but they're still choosing within good options. I mean, I'm not a parent. I think parenting is probably one of the hardest things that you can do. But I think, yeah, something like this is actually a good trick for parenting, probably.
27. Annoying song stuck in your head. If a song is stuck in your
Yeah, like this fucking background music that should be turned down a little bit.
head and you want to forget it, try thinking of the end of the song. Our brain tends to remember the things we've left unfinished. So
I like that. That's a good one. I have a worse piece of advice for this. This is something my friend said to me as a joke in high school. If you ever have a song stuck in your head, to try to get it out, you just replace it with dun 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 dun. I mean, you know, I'm not gonna pretend it actually makes sense. Probably you have that stuck in your head after, or it just doesn't work. It would be really hard to do. The other day I had a song by The Weeknd stuck in my head because I was like on a car ride. It was one of the last songs I listened to. It was stuck in my head for that evening. But I don't know how it ends. I would have had to go check if I wanted. Have I heard the Mariah Carey Christmas song? Yeah, I've heard it. One of my family members was watching the Thanksgiving Day Macy's parade or whatever, so I think they played it. That's true. That's a good point. Right. You're like exposed to a song against your will. Right. All I want for Christmas is you. What I really do recommend, not the stupid clown music I said, I do actually recommend like creating a almost remix in your head or like modifying it and then like just making it your own. And then it gets it sort of transformed. Like, all I want for Christmas is boots, boots, and you just do something different and then you get it out of your head.
Number 26. Get help. Your friend will most likely help you carry something if you continue to talk to them while handing them a box or something you need help with. Instead of just asking them,
just ask people for help and be straightforward.
Instead of just asking them if they'll help you carry something, just keep talking while giving them something at the same time. If you're busy talking to them,
this one's actually fucked up, and you're doing this to like your partner and your friends. Just ask. Can you imagine if someone did this to you? Just ask someone for help. Don't fucking talk to them and distract them and hand them shit. What am I, an idiot?
it keeps them distracted, and the majority of people won't even notice you're handing them something and will take it. 4. Insecurity. To make someone feel insecure, look at
What? Oh my god, I thought it was gonna be to not feel insecure.
Insecurity. To make someone feel insecure, look at their hairline while they speak. It will almost...
Yo, this is so funny. I'm sorry, this is satire. I get that they're not willing to admit it, but this is satire.
Number 22. Let them see how they look. For example, if you work in customer service, try installing a mirror behind you. This way, when people are talking to you or checking out at a counter, they will automatically be nicer because people feel less comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, a good version of this is reflect back to people how they come off to you. So if someone's seems really upset or aggressive, you can name it and say, hey, it seems like you are mad or upset with me, you know, or there are a lot of ways to reflect back to people how they appear to you. You don't need to literally hang a mirror behind you.
Number 21, confrontation. An example of this would be if you're in a meeting and you think someone is going to go off on you and start yelling at you about something,
Are they in a meeting?
sit right next to them. It makes people feel incredibly awkward being aggressive and talking bad about them when they're so close.
You go into your boss's office for a meeting where you're pretty sure he's gonna talk about how you underperformed or something, and you just sit right next to him and he's like, I need you to be on the other side of the desk, thank you. You can just sit in that chair.
17, high five. Next time while giving someone a high five, look at their elbow and you'll never miss. This is kind of like a target.
Oh, damn. Yo, that's actually slightly sad because I recognize that there are probably people who are great people who genuinely suck at high fives and who probably are why do I keep... Because some people have bad hand-eye coordination. That's not the end of the world, no big deal. But what a weird suggestion. What a weird mixture of suggestions. Look at their elbow.
Look at their elbow and you'll never miss.
I never miss, bro.
Believable lies. If you want someone to believe a lie you're telling, just add an embarrassing detail about yourself. An example could be, instead of saying,
yeah, Jimmy McGill being I drank piss. And he's lying to Kim by omitting, what he actually did in the desert until he's ready to talk about it.
no, I wasn't at Rick's house. I was with Andrew the whole time. Try saying, no, I haven't been to Rick's house in so long. Last time I was there, I made a fool of myself and flooded the bathroom at a party, and I don't think his parents want me over there for a while.
Okay, what are you lying about in this situation?
So I hung out with Andrew instead. This way, people automatically believe that you're telling.
Wake me up when there's a trick to figure out if someone's going to a shake or a pound. Yeah, that's fair.
15. Look into their eyes. Tell someone to look right into your eyes and ask them to say they can't stop looking. Ask them a random question.
Excuse me, tell them to look into your eyes and then ask them to say that they can't stop looking?
Look into their eyes. Tell someone to look right into your eyes and ask them to say they can't stop looking.
The fuck is going on? You like, really, what the fuck is going on? That
Ask them a random question, like what they had for lunch 2 days ago, and chances are they won't be able to answer you. It's tough to remember something without moving your eyes. Number 14.
What is that gonna help with?
Number 11. Keep calm. If you ever find yourself in an argument with someone, act much more peaceful than them.
Yo, that is a fun place for an argument, y'all. Holy fuck, I wanna have an argument there.
Let them raise their voice and get all worked up, but remain calm and don't raise your voice. The other person getting angry and yelling can cause them to say something particularly irrational, and you can use that against them later.
Just shameless, not constructive at all, just antisocial.
Number 10. Whisper. When you whisper something to someone, it almost always guarantees that they'll whisper back, even if you're in an environment where you don't need to be quiet. Number 9. Look right to
Why would you want that?
left. When trying to find something, look right to left instead of left to
Yo, what would you do? You know, they take you home and this is what their place looks like. What do you do?
right like you normally would. You're most likely to miss things because your eyes are so used to looking in one direction. When you switch it up and look in the opposite direction, your eyes slow down. This allows you to have a better chance of finding what you're searching for. Number 8.
That's an interesting one. I actually have sort of developed a weird, like, meditative game I play with myself sometimes where, like, if you try to, like, say you're looking at, like, a mountain range and you try to visually track the edge of the mountains up and down, whether you go left to right or right to left doesn't make a fucking difference as far as I'm concerned, but to try to focus and make your gaze, like, fluid in that way and, like, analog instead of, like, glitching and sort of, you know, we're used to, like, looking here and then looking there. If you try to make it flow, I think there's something very relaxing in that, to try to make your vision just move, consciously moving your vision, you know, not moving your head, obviously, but moving your vision, like, just in a straight line, really, you know, slower the better. So it's an interesting meditative thing. It's similar to eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is a therapeutic modality that I'm actually trained in, but I don't practice currently. But it's an evidence-based practice that's shown to have efficacy, and it basically involves stimulating your brain on both sides by doing different, either eye movement, or it could be tapping, or sound, obviously. It's not going to be smell.
Asking for help. If you want help from other people, just start simply asking, I need your help. People will most likely give in and
But that's not what you said before. You said we were supposed to distract them.
really assist you because they don't want to feel guilty for not helping you out. People tend to avoid guilt whenever possible. Number 7, chewing gum.
Imagine if I said this to one of my clients. They're like, you know, I really struggle asking for help sometimes. And I'm like, but have you tried asking for help? Because if you just keep asking, people will feel guilty and they don't want to feel guilty. So, bada bing, bada boom.
Scientists have discovered that chewing gum increases memory.
Chewing gum increases blood flow to the brain. If you chew gum at the same time as taking a test, you're more likely to score higher than people who don't chew gum.
Citation needed. I'm sure they put it in the description. What?
Number 5, the psychic. This one works best on kids. If you want to make your children or friends think you have some psychic ability, catch them in the middle of doing something wrong, and then turn and look away for a few seconds. While looking away or facing your back to them, call them out on whatever they're doing, and they'll be amazed.
What? I mean, how do you even come up with this?
This one is simple. Try asking someone to draw an uppercase letter E on their forehead with their finger. And if
What?
they draw it so you can read it the correct way, they're doing what's best for you and shows that they're an empathetic person. If they draw it facing themselves, so it's
Just shows they have spatial understanding. Right? Is that right? I don't know. I could be wrong, but it doesn't show empathy.
Harder for the reader to read, that means they are thinking of their self more than the other person and
No.
aren't as empathetic. Number 1, mirror their behavior. Mirroring is also known as mimicry. Some people do this naturally. People that naturally have this skill are also considered chameleons. They try to blend into their environment by copying other people's movements, speech patterns, and mannerisms. This ability can also be used consciously with some practice and is an excellent way to make yourself more likable. Researchers have studied mimicry and found that people who have been mimicked were a lot more likely to act in your favor toward the person who had copied their movements. Individuals who have had someone mimic their behavior are actually more agreeable and nicer to other people in general. Mirroring someone's behavior makes them feel validated and has a positive outcome because it helps with self-esteem and confidence.
For who? For the other person?
If you like this video, please give it a
Who are you? You're not the fucking person. Who the fuck are you?
thumbs up. Thanks for watching.
Fuck off. Who are you? Yeah, pretty weird. Yeah, I hope you learned some good tricks. I mean, I sort of go over it in the sort of reaction, but there's obviously some way to see and twist, these tools and these tricks that they give you. But so many of them are so overtly in need of that it's like, why do you feel the need to come from this perspective? Why? And the answer is because it's not that easy to come up with 30 reasonable ethical psychology tricks. I mean, you can, but you run out of them pretty fast. But if you're making up stuff like they were, the second one was about rocks, paper, scissors, right? What was that about? One is about interrupting someone when they're counting. I might have cut that one out. It's like if your friend's counting something and calculating something and you need to interrupt them, here's how you do it. It's like, thanks. What? Next up, we will be very briefly, checking out Marissa Peer, who has a YouTube channel with a lot of subscribers. Doesn't get that many views, but makes regular sort of self-help content and also sells training in her sort of trademark sort of treatment modality called RTT, Rapid Transformational Therapy. So we're gonna briefly look at Marissa Peer. Let's check it out. She actually, there's some good stuff here. Okay, let's see. What do we want? Do we want to achieve inner peace? Do we want to unlock ultimate health? Do we want to change our life for good? Do we want to never be lazy again? Do we want to feel like enough? Do we want to cope with grief? Do we want to feel like enough? Do we want to...
So you're beginning a beautiful guided meditation designed to make you super orgasmic. And this is wonderful.
You want to make a guided meditation to help people orgasm better? Yeah, fair enough. I don't know how much we're going to criticize this person, but that's a lot of buttons. No, but I would like to understand just how different corners of YouTube understand the mind and the soul and the self and the body.
The thing that is the sexiest thing in the world is confidence. Confidence is really sexy. Needy people who find each other really happy. So I need you, I need...
Wait, what is she saying? Needy people find...
Sexy. Needy people who... Confidence is really sexy. Needy people who find each other really happy. So I need...
Needy people who find each other really happy?
Confidence is really sexy. Needy people who find each other really happy. So
I'm sorry, is that a British thing? Needy people who find each other really happy? What?
I need you, I can't live without you, I can't live with...
So, Marissa Peer is the creator of a thing called Rapid Transformational Therapy Registered Trademark, which is a registered trademark. Anyways, I want to learn about rejection because apparently I'm being rejected, and this is how to fix it.
I can't be on my own, come with me. That works because there's the balance. You meet my needs, I meet your needs. But when one person is needy, they always are the loser because the other person doesn't understand. And so the problem is you have to think, why am I doing this? What am I doing this for? And look at that. And If you want your needs met, you need to say to your partner, listen, these are my needs.
It's very hard to really understand what she's saying for me. I find it very winding. But of course I agree that you have to let your partner know what your needs are. So that's, sure, if that's what was being said, sure, yeah. Her interest slaps too.
So whenever you're with anyone, I want you to ask yourself one question. How do I feel about myself when I'm with this girl, this guy?
That's good advice.
This man, this woman. If the answer is I don't feel good enough, that's not the person for you.
Whoa, little break the fourth wall shit. Damn, that's the next level.
I want you to imagine you're the stone and they're the setting and their job is to make you sparkle. Your job is not to make them sparkle. And when you try to earn love, work for love, pursue love.
Wait, if their job is to make you sparkle, your job is also to make them sparkle, correct? That sort of mutual support is not the same as being needy or being dependent.
So if you want to find phenomenal love, here's the only thing you have to do. Believe you are lovable. That's it. Because you see, you can only love someone to the degree.
If only, man. If only, y'all. I wish, right? What if you could just believe something and then it made your life better immediately?
Degree that you love yourself, and they can only love you to the degree that they love themselves.
Yeah, I mean, there's truth to that, yeah. You have to love yourself. It's so important. I love myself. But it doesn't immediately unlock everything you ever want.
And if all your energy is, show me you love me, prove you love me, make me feel you love me, because I don't feel lovable.
Do I love you all? No, not really. I mean, in a sense. But, oh yeah, I know you meant platonic. I mean, like, in a sense. I don't know, it just depends on what you mean. It's like, sure, yeah. I don't know, it's a little parasocial probably to be like, oh, I love my viewers. I don't know. Probably not helpful for anyone. But I hope you believe you are lovable anyway.
It's not your partner's job to make you feel lovable. It's your job.
For sure.
So many women try to change.
That's really good advice. Like, it's not your partner's job to make you feel lovable. It's genuinely good advice.
Their body, their weight, their shape. They get new outfits. They get their hair done. They try to change all this external stuff, maybe even having surgery to feel lovable. And men too. Buy nicer clothes, try to get some status symbols to go, look at me, aren't I lovable? You don't have to change your weight, shape, size, outfit,
That's
hair
great
color,
advice.
even your teeth color to find love.
Oh, thank you.
Where you get love, and the more love you get, the more you give back, and you're in this flow of giving and receiving love. It's a bit like breathing. So let's do this now. Breathe out. That's giving. Breathe in. That's receiving. So just give and receive a breath. Breathe in. Breathe out. Feels kind of balanced. But now try the other way. Just give. Just keep breathing out. That's it. Keep giving, 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 giving. But don't breathe in. Don't take a breath. Doesn't that feel weird? That energy just giving, trying to give what you want to get. And now do the opposite. Take. So breathe in and keep taking, 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 taking. Don't breathe out. And that feels kind of weird too. I'm just taking love. I'm letting someone give to me, but I'm not giving back. So nature requires balance. The best relationships have balance. You have to give and receive love the way you give and receive breath. It has to be equal.
So yeah, some good stuff in there, definitely. It's interesting to see how sort of the spiritual side of YouTube can also just take on a subject like rejection and sort of provide a lot of insight very similar to what I would say from a pretty, somewhat different background where I'm not usually kind of talking about manifesting or stuff like the, you know, hypnosis and stuff that they kind of emphasize over there at Marissa Peer's channel and company and everything. But yeah, some good advice for sure. Anyways, next up, we're going to look at a man named Justin Brown, who I actually found through looking into rapid transformational therapy, the thing Marissa Peer has come up with. He, I believe, got trained in it, or I think he got trained in it. I forget if he got trained in it or he just went to it as a client or both. Yeah, we're gonna listen to him talk about something else. That's just how I found him originally. We're gonna listen to him talk about his sort of introduction to spirituality in general, but also like manifesting and that sort of branch of spirituality in particular. So this is a really interesting YouTube video. I really enjoyed this one, so check this one out.
In today's video, I'm going to explain how embracing New Age spirituality turned me into an egotistical narcissist. And
like, I don't think I've ever heard someone like talk about this, honestly. I've never heard like a first-person perspective of this. I mean, maybe sort of some authors or writers have sort of reflected on this in lines here or there. I've never heard like a video essay about this, I don't think, or like an essay.
it all began with Esther Hicks and the law of attraction.
The powerful law of attraction and how it is the manager of all things.
I didn't even know who the law of attraction person was. Esther Hicks. I didn't even know that.
I was doing my PhD in London at the time, and I just launched a side business. My business partner was heavily into the law of attraction and said to me that we'd have more business success if I could just raise my vibration.
If there are like healthy and unhealthy ways to like use a belief in the law of attraction or like manifesting, this would lean on the unhealthy side because you're in what I presume probably became a difficult work environment. I'm just jumping to conclusions here.
If you haven't come across Esther Hicks, she's a New Age spiritual guru who's become immensely popular in the New Age movement.
Yeah, I have literally never heard of her. That's funny.
She's been featured on TV, and she spends a lot of her time hanging out with celebrities. Esther Hicks claims to be channeling a collective of spirits that are known as Abraham. And Abraham's spirit...
That's cultural appropriation. As a Jewish person, that's cultural appropriation.
...is apparently the teacher of the law of attraction. This has, of course, become a New Age meme that claims to describe how reality fundamentally works.
Oh my God. She looks like a spiritual Hillary Clinton. Like, what the fuck is with that backdrop?
It goes like this. Humans are both the creators of their own reality and also the product of their own reality.
I mean, in some ways, I obviously agree. In some ways.
Therefore, the law of attraction states that we can either attract good things into our lives or bad things.
I hate bad things.
Think more positive things about more things. In other words, look for reasons to feel good right where you are.
Of course. Of course, but that's not philosophical. That's basic self-help.
If we focus on what is lacking in our lives, then we'll continue to attract more of that negativity.
It's like this kind of stuff, like this sort of like brand of self-help that talks about manifesting seems to be so interesting. I think I said this on my last stream, but like they're making these like, I think ontological would be the sort of technical word for it. Like, they're making these claims about reality but it's like never fully clear what's being claimed. Like, can I literally have anything I want by wanting it? Like anything? Like, can I be an NBA player in my lifetime if I want to? Like, can I like discover a new element if I want to? Like, of course not. But of course, if you really want to, you can up the odds of anything. And there's such a thing as free will, sort of.
But if we make an effort to focus on what is positive in our lives, then will have a positive influence on reality, and this will result in more positive things coming into our lives. On the face of it, this all sounds okay. It's important that we align our beliefs with the things that we want to create in our life. The problem for me was my reason for embracing these teachings in the first place.
Yeah, for sure.
My intention from the outset was to be more successful as a result of embracing spirituality. I had an image in my mind.
I'm really enjoying this video. It's a really interesting perspective.
My relationships took a downward turn. And even now, 10 years later, I still feel some regret over some of the things which happened, of which I've spoken more about in another recent video.
Hey, good for him, honestly. This guy seems like a good chap, straight up. And that's why we're watching. I mean, this is a very, very good perspective. You know, regret is very healthy. I shouldn't say regret is inherently healthy. Regret is like any emotion. There's healthy ways to experience it and unhealthy. But yeah, I mean, you just have to find meaning in it like any other emotion and find a healthy way to process it. I mean, your regrets are trying to tell you something. And I think when you adequately learn from them, they stop hurting so much. And one day you wake up, you brush your teeth, and you go to work, and you realize you haven't thought about it all day, not once, any of it. And that's the moment when you realize you can forget.
I was too busy thinking about how to become one of the richest people in the world and not doing enough with my actions. Thirdly, my ego grew to superhuman levels. What happened is that I was lucky that a couple of close friends of mine and my two brothers helped me to see that there was a big difference between the vision of what I wanted to create and the person that I was becoming at a deeper fundamental level. This difference had grown so large as a result of the way that I was practicing my spirituality, but thanks to my friends and my brothers, I could see that this really wasn't me. They reminded me that my purpose in being successful was around helping people to embrace their inner creativity.
Wow. So he just had like a successful intervention about his like sort of unhealthy approach to spirituality and new age thinking. That's extremely cool. And I feel like very difficult to do. Good for them.
That was why I'd set up my business in the first place. The purpose wasn't about me and my success. It was always about helping others. So what I did was I took action on the things that I truly cared about, and I focused more on my actions in the here and now.
Yeah, and being like ethical and pro-social just feels better for your mental health.
I completely missed the point of spirituality, which is to align with our true nature, connect with people and the natural world around us, and to see that everything is part of a greater cycle of life. It was only when I realized my mistake that I started to slow down and enjoy life. And it didn't take long after that for my business to start growing again because I was focused on what I truly cared about and helping people with the business. If you're watching this and you feel like any of what I'm sharing may represent parts of what's happening in your life, please don't worry. I think we can develop a healthy relationship with New Age spirituality so long as it comes from a more humble place.
He's really chill. I like this guy. Yeah, definitely a lot of food for thought there. I really like that concept, and you can sort of tell how he's kind of grown out of a misinterpretation of spirituality that I think is very common. Next up, we're going to have an extremely short segment where I watch a Teal Swan video that's actually makes some really good points. I've critiqued Teal Swan. I have a previous video here on the side channel critiquing the way she talks about something she refers to as wokeness. Here, she makes some good points, but my audio is all messed up, and so, yeah, it's just a very brief thing, and that's good. Spiritual bypassing would mean, like, bypassing a feeling and basically, trying to avoid some feeling by basically using spiritual techniques that maybe ultimately are not so bad, but shouldn't be relied on that much. Okay, let's see. Oh, it's in sevens.
Spiritual bypassing is the act of using spiritual beliefs to avoid your unmet needs, deep pain, and unresolved wounds. Spiritual bypassing is a form of avoidance. Because it's a form of avoidance, it's a form of resistance.
Okay, this is fantastic so far.
Spiritual bypassing is in fact the shadow side of spirituality.
Some examples. What is this? Oh, it's just some stock photo.
Examples of spiritual bypassing include anger phobia, exaggerated detachment.
Anger phobia is a fantastic phrase that I've never heard before, actually.
Debilitating judgment about one's negativity or shadow side. Devaluation of the personal relative to the spiritual. Avoidance of physical, day-to-day life. Delusions of having arrived at a higher level of being.
Yeah, so pretty small segment, kind of weird. I don't know. I really don't usually agree with Teal Swan, but she might really have a good idea of what spiritual bypassing is. So yeah, but I forget what the rest of the video was like because, yeah, I don't know. I haven't really rewatched it because the audio is bad. You know what I mean? Unlike this, where I'm holding the mic, so the audio must be good. Because it's handheld, which means, you know, organic. Next up, we will be enjoying a video by the channel Wisecrack. Now, I had never heard of this channel, but it's a pretty interesting video. They sort of paint this picture of the development of psychological thinking and the popularization. Sorry, can we try that again? From popularization? Okay. Popularization of psychological language. So a lot to kind of enjoy and some things to definitely kind of think twice about. And it's interesting. There are some gaps I sort of felt as I watched the video that I kind of comment on, but overall a very intriguing video. So let's check it out. Hey, today, a very special treat. I think this video is going to be interesting. It's called Is Therapy Speak Gaslighting Us? And it's by a channel called Wisecrack with 3.13 million subscribers. So I don't know if I've watched any of their other stuff, but that is a lot. It's a collection of academics, filmmakers. So let's see this video, and I'm very curious because obviously therapy speak is a very interesting concept. And I want to do a video about it actually one day because it comes up in some shows. Like I remember watching The Office, and it sort of comes up when Jim and Pam go to therapy. They start to talk in this like sort of weird robotic therapy speak. And I feel like you definitely see it on other shows too, and movies and stuff. And it's a little bit weird. It is a real thing though, and there's some real criticism there for sure. There's a lot of people who do have negative experiences with therapy, and when you have that disconnect, that's gonna be, I think this is one of the sort of aspects of that, is people feeling that there's like a falseness to the approach of therapy, which I think there can be probably for some therapists. And it's, I think something you have to struggle with as a therapist is to like not just like fall for kind of cliche ways of approaching problems or conceptualizing problems. I don't know. Wow.
Recently, whether I'm talking to friends or watching one of my favorite shows, Love is Blind, I can't help but notice how much everything is starting to sound like therapy speak.
For me, I think I feed really hard off like people's energy. I would kind of maybe consider myself like an empath.
Okay, I have to be honest, because that's really funny, because that's not therapy speak. That's spirituality, sort of new age speak. Therapy speak is you need to process your emotions, stuff like that. But okay, whatever. It's probably getting there.
Gaslighting, drama, OCD, toxic boundaries, emotion.
OCD? What? Okay. He's probably going to critique how people use these terms, not people talking about their actual experiences with these things. Okay.
Dumping. These words used to occupy professional mental health settings, but now they've been dropped into the mainstream and have lost much of their meaning. This specific form of semantic expansion of psychological terms was dubbed concept creep by scholar Nick Haslam in 2016 to describe the way therapeutic ideas broadened to the point of losing meaning. Now, we've long been in denial about the complex issues surrounding mental health, especially the importance of and need for therapy. But in 2023, it feels like societally, we maybe went a little too far. And many well-meaning conversations now risk devolving into therapy gibberish. So how did mental health go from something people wouldn't discuss in public to something people won't shut up about? Let's find out in this Wisecrack edition, Is Therapy Speak Making Us Nuts? But first, I wanted to tell you about something that's way cheaper than therapy.
Okay.
So let's talk about how we got from diagnosing someone with demonic possession to treating depression with CBT, aka cognitive behavioral therapy. At the end of the 19th century, Dr. Sigmund "This Gun is a Penis" Freud discovered that certain ailments could be treated by talking about them instead of fixing them with medical treatment.
Well, to be more accurate, his teacher / colleague, Joseph Breuer, I'm so bad. German is so hard to pronounce. Breuer. Joseph Breuer, fuck, it's so hard to get that R, had a few different patients, and one of them was, I talk about this in my video about When Nietzsche Wept, that movie. And one of the clients was Bertha Pappenheim, and she sort of came up with the idea that, hey, I don't want to be hypnotized actually, bro. Maybe I'm just going to talk. And then they sort of ran with that. So to be a little more, I don't blame Wisecrack for not going into this. It's worth giving that context. It's not like Freud came up with this on his own. It was sort of the patient being like, maybe I should do this instead of that thing you guys are doing with everybody. Hypnosis. Which has its value, but yeah.
He hypothesized that we all have a subconscious where unacceptable thoughts, memories, and motives hang out.
Yeah, that's what I think. And maybe Freud didn't come up with that. But if he did, like, that's the one really good thing about Freud for sure, because that's a good point.
Unbeknownst to the conscious mind. You know, like thinking that your mom is hot.
This is your dad.
Mom, you're gotta be joking. Or irrationally hating your first grade teacher, Mr. Casey. The idea of the subconscious birthed the field of psychoanalysis. Now, Freud developed a set of theories and therapeutic techniques that dealt with the unconscious mind, including talk therapy. Then, in the 1950s, Freud's nephew, Edward Bernays,
I think he meant in the 1950s. He's talking about Edward Bernays. Oh, that was a big jump.
mind, including talk therapy. Then, in the 1950s, Freud's nephew, Edward Bernays,
that's a bit of a jump. I mean, you're not going to do anything in between Freud and Edward Bernays.
Up Madison Avenue with his own spin on psychoanalysis. Bernays believed that human psychology could be used to drive consumer behavior, and proved it with legendary ad campaigns. Like when he...
Wait, how's my audio?
Encouraged women to smoke by branding cigarettes as feminist torches of encouraged women behavior, and proved it with legendary ad campaigns. Like when he encouraged women to smoke by branding cigarettes as feminist torches of freedom. Now, if you're thinking about Don Draper in Mad Men, yes, it's basically like that.
Everybody else's tobacco is poisonous. Lucky Strikes is toasted.
The success of Bernays' campaigns shifted marketing firms' openness to using psychoanalysis as a tool.
Yeah. So I think it's an interesting question. Like, are people who work at these companies like morally bankrupt and behaving unethically? And I think the answer is yes.
Poisonous. Lucky Strikes.
Like, you can do other things to survive in this world, you know.
Is toasted.
The success of Bernays' campaigns shifted marketing firms' openness to using psychoanalysis as a tool to shape or manipulate buyer behavior. Finally, we had a financial incentive to understand the human brain.
It's a little bit fragmented here. We don't have to portray it like this thing, but okay. This chapter by chapter.
Forward to the 1970s, and the field of psychology and the techniques of psychoanalysis took off with the coming-of-age boomers. Overall, the 1970s saw an increase in emphasis on the self. I mean, the boomers weren't called the me generation for nothing. See, by the summer of 1971, much of the psychedelia and political activism associated with the 60s counterculture had dissolved, leaving young people without a source of meaning.
Okay, it's just like a lot is missing. Like, you're trying to do a lot in a really short amount of time, and it's sort of leading to these kind of huge generalizations, but I guess if we just roll with it, it's fine.
If you want to know more about psychedelic 60s culture, we have some recent videos on that. You can check them out. They responded by turning the 60s ethos inward via things like jogging, health food, and yes, psychoanalysis, coinciding with...
Responded by turning inward after...
generation for nothing. See, by the summer of 1971, much of the psychedelia and political activism associated with the 60s counterculture had dissolved, leaving young people without a source of meaning. If you want to know more about psychedelic 60s culture, we have some recent videos on that. You can check them out. They responded by turning the 60s ethos inward via things like jogging, health food, and yes, psychoanalysis.
So he's saying that, like, after the 60s, like, people kind of went over this, like, high and then, like, turned inward by jogging, by doing, like, self-care instead of, like, tripping out, I guess?
Coinciding with what's called the refinement period of psychology.
Never heard
Then
of that.
in the 80s, Oprah imbued...
I never heard of the refinement period of psychology. That's really interesting. Wait, hold on. Refinement period of psychology. What? It doesn't bring up anything. There's nothing. What is refinement? Methods that minimize the pain. There's literally nothing about what he just mentioned. I searched on Google. It doesn't bring up anything.
With what's called the refinement period of psychology. Then in the 80s, Oprah... people wanted to become better by fixing themselves. And titles like The Power of Now, The Four Agreements, and The Art of Happiness became household favorites. Narrative television also caught the therapy bug, and eventually, even mob bosses got therapists.
Yeah, I gotta watch The Sopranos.
And he's...
Oh wait, I don't wanna see that.
Is everywhere, including our daily conversations via therapy speak. So what's driving this fixation? Well, let's backtrack to understand why we needed therapy in the first place. Because long before you laid on a couch and told a stranger your deepest insecurities, people all went to one big therapy.
My clients don't lay down. Just that's not normally how it goes. Just nowadays, it's worth pointing out. People usually sit.
You laid on a couch and told a stranger your deepest insecurities, people all went to one big therapist in the sky, named God. Or if you're a good Catholic like me, you went to his administrative assistant, the priest, who you'd confess to inside a small wooden box, and you definitely wouldn't lie about how you did hand stuff after prom. You know, you wouldn't lie about that. You would just look an old Irish man in the eyes and say, I did hands over pants stuff consensually after listening to an R. Kelly song at a dance. He wasn't canceled then, by the way. It was 2002, 2003. We didn't know R. Kelly was bad, so don't taint my moment, okay? But over the course of the 19th century,
I mean, I definitely don't have a comment on that, except that, wow, this channel's interesting.
Society became increasingly secularized, and religion began to fill a less important role. Without a higher purpose or the carrot of heaven, life and a meaningless death felt, well, sad.
Okay, I mean, this guy's like a good writer, and I like how it's all said, but it is like so overgeneralized. I wish I had the like ability to just say things like this, because people definitely like it.
Soul crushing, honestly scary as which led people to existential dread. 20th century society tried to fill the hole of religion, but the confessional element was still missing.
It's like Nietzsche.
People had nowhere to put their guilt, their fear, and their need for redemption. But then Freud came along and argued that we can live without God by reframing our anxiety and neurosis over culture and civilization as a psychological struggle within the self. This encouraged people to switch from stressing out over what was going on out there to focusing on what was going on in here. So worry less about a nuclear holocaust and worry more about why your dad didn't make it to any of your Little League games.
One version of that I can agree with is like Freud does seem to have like focused like too much on familial stressors when I think he was blind to social structures. Not that it's bad to focus, like you can focus on whatever you want, like you don't have to, but I think he like notably didn't discuss like economic relations, or like he seemed very limited by his perspective.
Nuclear holocaust.
Yeah, it was odd that in this video he jumped to the idea of a nuclear. I don't know why you would say nuclear holocaust. First of all, is that an expression people use? Maybe don't say that, actually, dude. But it was weird to jump to nuclear stuff from. We were just talking about Freud. It does. I mean, it was in like the span of a sentence.
And worry more about why your dad didn't make it to any of your Little League games. Our culture simultaneously shifted to revolve more around the individual than larger societal forces, and morality transitioned from being about the collective to being about the self. People turned to therapy for things previously offered by religion. Therapy replaced confession.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some truth to this, for sure. Yeah. I mean, that's for sure true. Like, I mean, that's definitely not how I see therapy, obviously, but you know, not everyone comes being like, I have a diagnosis of a mental health disorder and I need to meet with a mental health provider. Sometimes it's more like I need counseling, and the line where spirituality starts is sort of ambiguous, and that's cool. That's sort of how it is. I think as a provider, you have to be able to do both ethically. I think ethically, you sort of, unless you make your branding or whatever and your way of working with clients very specific and very explicit. Anyways, yeah, some people might still go to therapy in the sense of like a confessional type of thing, but most therapists are not really going to be trained to be doing that exactly. But there's an element of that to therapy anyways. It's just a matter of it's not all confessional, so.
Therapy replaced confessionals as spaces to alleviate guilt and to reflect on existence.
I mean, I just, at the end of the day, y'all, this type of video really falls flat with the lack of sources. I just can't, like, I'm sorry, it's not like they're making wild claims, but they should just ground it in sources. Just tell me. It just feels kind of made up and idealistic. It just feels categorical and idealistic. Like, just ground it in something.
Self-affirming mantras replaced prayers. Communities with the same diagnosis.
Like, people research this shit. You could absolutely research this shit.
Existence. Self-affirming mantras replaced prayers. Communities with...
Self-affirming mantras didn't necessarily replace prayers, though. They only did for people who don't like praying and do like self-affirming mantras, which are probably not that many people.
Communities with the same diagnosis replaced church groups and self-actualization.
I feel like this is a Breaking Bad thing too, where like the social worker has like the top button on. Nah, seriously. Nah, we usually button it.
These with the same diagnosis replaced church groups, and self-actualization replaced salvation. Now, to be fair, none of this is inherently good or bad. This cultural transformation was rooted in a genuine desire for self-understanding, which is healthy. The only problem is, with everyone turning inwards, we sort of lost our ability to think and act collectively. This is one reason why solving, say, the climate crisis feels impossible. Now, religion has many flaws.
Interesting.
What it does have is the power to make people believe.
Why has he not talked about capitalism once?
Believe in something bigger than themselves, and thus to make sacrifices for the greater good. In short, therapeutic culture reinforces individualism.
I mean, Freud's time is also this, like, taking off of the Industrial Revolution, like, well taken off. You might as well talk about that.
Whereas church reinforces communalism. Again, this isn't bad, except that another thing was happening to exacerbate all of this. Our good friend, neoliberalism.
Yes!
Well, we talked about
Let's go!
this a lot in previous videos. We're just going to focus on one particular aspect today.
Let's go.
The emphasis on the self and on individual responsibility.
Let's fucking
in regards
go.
to mental health, this thinking often takes the form of the question, are you doing the work? Neoliberalism helped foster the idea.
Oh, that's a good example of therapy speak. Are you doing the work? That's interesting. Yeah, that could definitely be framed in a very individualistic and potentially harmful sort of it's your fault if you're not succeeding type of way.
The idea that instead of changing the world, what we really need to do is look inward. and change ourselves. The upside of this is that many of us get better through therapy. The downside is it can lead us to ignore the societal factors that contribute to the systemic problem of mental illness.
It shouldn't have to, and most competent therapists can understand this, like, you know, a basic thing that, like, we work on a very micro level. Like, as a therapist, you know, like, I work on the micro level. There's also the meso level of the community, and there's the macro level of maybe the state or the nation or whatever. And you just kind of know that, and you inherently understand the limitations of what you do. You know, if my client's like, I need to get paid more at my job, I'm not like, why don't you try being grateful for what you do get paid? Like, no, that would be gaslighting. No, not really a great example of gaslighting, but it would be rude and mean and wrong and bad.
Stuff like, I don't know, there's a climate crisis, and there's war, there's social media, growing income inequality. Everything's really expensive. Are we ever going to afford to retire? You know, stuff like that.
Yeah, if clients say that to me, I'm like, yeah, I completely understand. I mean, I'm not going to, yeah, of course, yeah.
While therapy is unquestionably healing and beneficial for many, a therapy practice disconnected from social and political change has a limit.
Very true. Very, very good point.
So much we and our therapists can do on our own. For example, in education, instead of addressing the pedagogical trends of recent years and the increased emphasis on self-control in the classroom, young boys in particular are diagnosed with ADHD and prescribed medication. In a sense,
yeah, I do think there's probably huge amounts of overdiagnosis because it's just school demands absurd, rigid, conforming behavior for so many kids. It's, yeah, we do just, sometimes I think just diagnose divergent behavior, and we need to make society more flexible, obviously, to kids' different, you know, orientations and needs and all that.
Mental health has become a great smokescreen for the ills of neoliberalism. When Western societies are more depressed than ever, the cause can't just be you failing to reconcile with your dad because you won't use words like boundaries and self-talk. Again, we cannot
I mean, the reason someone wouldn't want to reconcile with their dad would not be that they don't want to use therapy language. That would not be the reason someone would not want to reconcile with their dad. But fair enough. Yeah, this guy's, you know, really going through it.
Again, we cannot overstate how helpful and life-changing therapy can be. But sadly, it's also one of the few tools we have for coping with feelings of futility in an increasingly chaotic world.
Aww.
This is how we got from never talking about our feelings to talking about them constantly via therapy speak. The contemporary rise of therapy speak has been
God. Oh my God, these therapists on TikTok. I mean, I'm a therapist on YouTube, so I can't be like a dick, but like you have to just be responsible about it. It's not like it's wrong, you just have to be responsible about it. You can't talk about your fucking clients or some shit.
Broadly using therapy terms incorrectly because, well, we're not all trained therapists. At the same time, even though the language of therapy has become more inclusive, the actual institutional structures around mental health remain exclusive and expensive, especially right here in the good old US of A. Yeah. So it's like we're given a sneak preview of all the self-actualizations we could achieve if the structures needed to embody and practice that language weren't hidden behind a paywall. Because society as a whole, in America at least, won't provide the support we need. And in the absence of widespread access to therapy, we have a simultaneous proliferation of TikTok videos, which often stereotype, oversimplify, or misunderstand very real mental health disorders. At the same time, content creators are incentivized and encouraged to pathologize their issues to please the algorithm, with some even faking disorders for clout, a phenomenon so real it's been dubbed illness appropriation.
No, it's not been dubbed that. That's not an actual term. That's like also from TikTok.
But
it's called like factitious disorder. If you're pretending to actually have a disorder, that's a disorder.
Sponsored videos about mental health related topics on TikTok masquerade as educational, while in fact, if you just lift up their glasses, you'd see that they're advertisements in disguise. Therapy services and psychiatric pharmaceuticals are sold via expensive apps and advertised on TikTok and Instagram. And they especially target Gen Z, the generation that struggles the most with mental health issues. Profiting off people's mental troubles feels like the next...
Yeah, like should a company be able to like advertise on TikTok, like, medications. Like, I don't know. I mean, I don't think medication should be advertisable. I don't see the benefit of that. I think that is a sad overcompensation for a really failing medical system. Because if doctors just met with patients more regularly, you know, you wouldn't have to worry about that. If, like, people just had better relationships with their doctors, if doctors were not overworked as much, if medical systems in general just functioned better, you know, which I think would be done with, or assisted by, single payer healthcare for sure. For me, it's like, yeah, if I just dealt with one insurance company instead of like 6, it would save me hours every week.
Thinkers like psychotherapist Esther Perel discuss something called collective resilience. She explains, resilience is not a bunch of traits in an individual. Resilience is the ability to tap into the collective resources.
That's
if everybody
great.
goes at it alone, we'll be avoidant.
It's a well-researched
But
video.
if we create a thing together and understand how we maintain hope, we will not have a mental health crisis. We will have a world crisis with people that are coping. And maybe one lesson our secularized society can take from old school religion is that coping together is typically more effective than coping alone. But what do you guys think? Is therapy speak helping us be more open about our personal struggles? Does the rise of therapeutic and share, it means a lot.
Interesting vid. That was definitely a good video. I guess the answer to the title, so the title is Therapy Speak Gaslighting Us? I guess I was worried the answer was going to be yes, which is too simplistic. The answer instead was sometimes, and we should be aware of why that is, which I think is good. Okay. Interesting stuff, cool stuff, lots to see on YouTube, lots of different takes on mental health. You sort of have to have critical thinking, you know, you have to always watch things with a watchful eye, you know, and be like, okay, make sure everything adds up, make sure the arguments are there when you feel like they should be. But lastly, we're going to finish up this video with a very, we're going to finish up my video with a very interesting video by someone else that I've now sort of transformed through fair use. Fair use? This video is by Anya Turnbull. Very good, very intriguing and interesting channel. And she made this really cool video about how a story by David Foster Wallace sort of illustrates this concept of how narcissism and like being too self-involved to a very excessive and like disordered degree can also be intricately connected to self-hatred and also forms of depression. So sort of how narcissism has this, or can have this, self-hatred side, and, you know, reverse that around, how self-hatred can have this narcissistic side. So it's a very interesting video, and I found a lot to really enjoy. I found it a very good specific topic. She clearly has a really significant connection to the story, and so it has this very personal feel. It feels like a video only this person, Anya Turnbull, could have made. Sorry, I can't talk. But yeah, this is it. So let's check it out. Perfect. Nothing to change there. That fits perfectly. Okay, so this is a video called Why Self-Hatred Can Be Narcissistic, according to David Foster Wallace. So David Foster Wallace was a writer. He's a writer. He's passed away, but he was a writer, an American writer, and he is well known for writing the book Infinite Jest, which I have read. And he's also written a bunch of short stories, which were sort of critically acclaimed, I think, to some extent, and I definitely thought they were good. I liked his writing a lot for a while and sort of grew out of it to a certain extent, so I thought it would be really interesting to watch this video. And I do already completely understand the premise before even watching, so I was really psyched to see someone break down how David Foster Wallace sort of speaks to this issue of why self-hatred can be narcissistic. Let's check it out.
So, the topic of today's video is how self-hatred can be a symptom of narcissism. We tend to think of narcissists as very puffed up, kind of loud, arrogant people. And that's the type of narcissism called overt or grandiose narcissism. But there's also another type called covert or vulnerable narcissism. And this type of person can actually present as very shy and self-critical. In a psych journal published by Cambridge University Press, Dr. Jessica Yackley describes these two types like this. Overt narcissists may appear arrogant, pretentious, dominant, self-assured, exhibitionist, or aggressive, whereas covert narcissists may present as overly sensitive, insecure, defensive, and anxious about an underlying sense of shame and inadequacy.
That's interesting. Yeah, see how good it is when they cite resources, like when they cite sources in the video? It's so good.
I think a simple way of looking at it is just this. Whether you like yourself too much or you hate yourself too much, at the end of the day, what you're doing really is just thinking about yourself too much. I'm sure you know this, but the term narcissism comes from the Greek myth of Narcissus. And Narcissus was this very hot young man who one day caught his own reflection in a lake and became absolutely transfixed and ended up sort of wasting away at the side of the lake, staring at himself. But what if he wasn't admiring himself? What if he was obsessing over enlarged pores or wrinkles or receding gums?
Dolly was a narcissist, too.
So to illustrate this idea, I'm going to be using a story from 1998 called The Depressed Person. It's by David Foster Wallace of The Terrible Bandanas and Verbose Genius. The title
Yeah, I don't think I read this story, actually.
of the story makes it sound like this is a story about depression, which it is to a degree, but mainly it's about the habits and etiology of self-obsession. The protagonist of the story, the depressed person, we never actually learn her real name. She certainly thinks she's depressed. I mean, it's basically her identity. But as the story goes on, it becomes clear that there's actually a lot more going on. The former acquaintances and classmates who composed her support system often told the depressed person that they just wished she could be a little less hard on herself. To which the depressed person responded by bursting involuntarily into tears and telling them that she knew all too well that she was one of those dreaded types of everyone's grim acquaintance who call at inconvenient times and just go on and on about themselves. And, you know, the reason, I mean, this story...
Sort of disjointed. Doesn't really respond to what the friend said. It's an interesting bit of writing. I mean, David Foster Wallace's writing, I just always found it really interesting. And then support system is capitalized. It's like a Thomas Pynchon sort of meta, I don't know.
Times and just go on and on about themselves. And, you know, the reason, I mean, this story fucks with me really hard. I feel personally offended by it because everything I loathe about this frankly miserable slug of a woman is what I hated about myself when I was in my early 20s, when I was way more depressed and more narcissistic than I am now. But I do realize the irony of making all of this.
I feel like I used to be like more narcissistic than I am now. What did she put on the screen?
Depressed and more narcissistic than I.
That's interesting. I look forward to learning about that. Yeah, I feel like I used to be more narcissistic than I am now. I feel like when I was young, sometimes I was just too in my own head, and it was kind of a defense mechanism in some ways.
I am now. But I do realize the irony of making all of this about myself. So before we go on, though, I have to say one thing. David Foster Wallace was brilliant.
Oh, yeah. I didn't say how he was like a fucked up person yet.
He was also an abuser. He dated the absolutely genius
Mary Carr,
writer and poet and memoirist Mary Carr, and stalked her, kicked her, followed her kid home from school.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Ambushed her AA meetings.
Yeah.
These are biographical facts, and they're not relevant to my analysis of his story. But I still think it's just important to have that said. Oh, and one more thing. So...
Well... if I think they're relevant, I'm going to speak to that because I don't know about that. They might be a little relevant, but I get not wanting to make it about that.
But I still think it's just important to have that said. Oh, and one more thing. So when I say that hating yourself is narcissistic, I am not implying that everyone who dislikes themselves is a clinical personality disordered narcissist.
Yeah.
Right? Narcissism is a spectrum. And a degree of narcissism is actually absolutely necessary and healthy. And most of us are super far from the end of the spectrum where the people with narcissistic personality disorder live. So we can all just relax, okay? Okay.
And even if you have narcissistic personality disorder, you can also relax.
Brief interviews with hideous men. You gotta give him credit. Truly the king of titles. The story begins like this. The depressed person was in terrible and unceasing emotional pain, and the impossibility of sharing or articulating this pain was itself a component of the pain and a contributing factor in its essential.
Yeah, it's like, I can't read David Foster Wallace anymore. It's just like, dude, I don't know. It's not like fiction.
Some readers and reviewers see this story as a genuine attempt on Wallace's part to make us understand what depression feels like. Wallace is going to do the best he can to communicate that pain and horror. We don't want to be her, but would agree to hug her if that would help ease the pain. I would rather eat nails than hug this woman. I do not think this is about making us feel her pain. Instead, what it does is it takes her misery and questions it. Is all of this really coming from depression, or is it coming from narcissism? By the way, I will be posting all of my favorite books and movies and whatnot about depression and narcissism on my Patreon. Also, if you become a patron, you get your name in the end credits of every video, if you want that, of course. Come be a patron. The depressed person is sad. She's miserable, in fact, but she's very grandiose about this misery. Grandiosity is the sort of pomp and arrogance that is the easiest way, really, to recognize a person with above-average narcissism in the wild.
Yeah, and the over-talking about narcissism should not make you afraid to, like, think about narcissism as a concept. Because it is still a thing. It doesn't make people, like, evil and disgusting, but it's, like, a concept that does describe very real tendencies. You can and probably should, be able to kind of point it out in others and yourself.
And
as well as grandiosity. And yeah, for me, I felt like my narcissism was connected to grandiosity. When I was younger, I feel like it was. And it was like a defense mechanism and not healthy.
And in the next paragraph, it turns out that she was incredibly traumatized in her childhood when her divorced parents couldn't decide which of them was supposed to pay for her braces. And divorce is really, really hard on the kid, but she describes this fight as the venomous struggle over the cost of her orthodonture, and that struggle's legacy of emotional pain for her.
I mean, it is David Foster Wallace describing it that way, but I get that it's close third person, but the venomous struggle over the cost of her orthodonture, like, that just makes me cringe.
Again, it sounds like someone who takes themselves quite seriously.
Yeah.
It also doesn't help her case that she's incredibly privileged. Eventually, she gets the braces and summer camp, private school, horse riding lessons, therapy, and a nose job. So
yeah, and David Foster Wallace had another story where someone's depressed and had done everything possible to try to feel better, and it doesn't go well. That was in the book Oblivion, I believe. It was one of those stories. I mean, he's obviously expressing his experience. Yeah.
Her therapist even suggests at one point that her mood disorder might be a defense mechanism.
Said that she felt comfort enough in the validity of their therapeutic connection together to point out that a chronic mood disorder could itself be seen as constituting an emotionally manipulative defense mechanism, as long as a depressed person had the depression's affective discomfort to preoccupy her. Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. Yeah, depression can itself be a defense mechanism. Yeah, that's not a bad point.
The depressed person's therapist actually suggests that this constant self-criticism is an attempt to protect oneself against the possibility of a negative judgment by making it clear that one was already judging oneself far more negatively than any listener could have the heart.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. David Foster Wallace was so good at pointing this stuff out. It was just sad that he clearly couldn't make himself behave better.
The depressed person's therapist, like any good therapist would, tries to break her out of this cycle of self-criticism and manipulation. The therapist, who by this time had less than a year to live, said that she felt she could...
Oh my god, wait, I've read this story. No, I've read this. Or he did that in the other story too. I honestly think he has another story where the therapist is dying.
Is the depressed person really depressed? Or is she a narcissist who's using depression to get...
It's not an either or.
Get sympathy and attention? Or is it both and one just reinforces the other in a misery vortex?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, she certainly displays symptoms of narcissism, to a degree that I would say is, clinically significant. So more than your run-of-the-mill, somewhat narcissistic person. But that doesn't necessarily mean her depression isn't real either. Her subjective accounts of pain and depression shouldn't be completely discounted. Depression is comorbid with narcissism, especially with covert narcissism. And there are studies that show that depression can make you less empathetic because you are sort of inwardly focused.
Yeah.
The most important part that indicates that she might truly be depressed is rumination. Rumination is a way of thinking that is basically a trademark of depressive cognition. It's when you just dwell on the same problem and mull it over and over in your mind. The word rumination comes from the way cows eat, where they chew their cud super slowly and then swallow it and then regurgitate it and chew it all over again. Well, she constantly worries that she is taking her friends' time away from their active, vibrant, largely pain-free, long-distance lives, vibrant, stimulating careers, full, vibrant, undepressed life, and healthy and joyful sexual intimacy with their partner. What this story does absolutely brilliantly is two things. First of all, it shows...
I don't know. Sometimes it's like maybe he just shouldn't have written that story and he should have like done something else and gone to the beach. I mean, I guess if David Foster Wallace was depressed, like better to make some beautiful art out of it, but it does seem like this type of story would just reinforce your depression. But I've made a lot of dark art. I don't know. I'm not going to let someone be like, don't make that. So I don't know.
Circular loops that the story's built around, they loop the reader in too, or at least they certainly loop me in. And that's the second brilliant thing to me. The depressed person is like if David Foster Wallace took all my worst qualities and just isolated them into a single character. She's like my personal Mr. Hyde. In my early 20s, the topics that, I would constantly be thinking about, is my depression real? What do I have to be sad about? Am I actually just a narcissist? Does my therapist know I'm a narcissist? Or is it my depression?
If your therapist thinks you're a narcissist, they should tell you. Yeah, like the answer to like, can everyone tell what a big loser I am is like, that's a really loaded question. Why would you ask me that? Because the question should be, do I think I'm a loser then? And then if I think I'm a loser, why do I think I'm a loser? That's like, do I think I'm a loser and why do I think I'm a loser is a way more important question than can other people tell. We'll get to that later. You know what I mean?
Feelings of inadequacy and shame and self-loathing can stem both from depression and from narcissism, and one can reinforce the other. Hating yourself, counterintuitively, in my opinion, does not make you a better person, right? You'd think if you're constantly criticizing yourself, you're sort of moving towards becoming...
Hating is not criticizing.
Better. I think anyone who criticizes themselves a lot knows that that is not the case at all. And being self-aware, terrifyingly, also doesn't make you a better person. Just like the depressed person knows how she's supposed to be acting, that absolutely doesn't make her act that way. Being more self-aware doesn't mean being happier. You can know everything that's wrong with you, and you can know what you need to do to be happier, and still not act on it. Yeah. I honestly think that another layer of this story is just Wallace throwing shade at therapy. However,
sort of. Yeah, sort of. I mean, I guess he did, but like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it'd be interesting to reread his writing now that I'm a therapist. I don't think I've read his writing since being a therapist, but I just remember it more as like, it's just a lot of people do have bad experiences with therapists, and I think he just never had a great one. And so it was like just one of the many things in his life that let him down. And it is a huge failure. It would have been so cool for him to have a better connection with a mental health professional, I guess, if he never had one. I don't really know. To someone he could say, hey, I'm engaging in this abusive behavior towards this woman, Mary Carr, and they could be like, why are you doing that? You know, do you maybe want to stop doing that? Like, that would probably help with the depression too.
The depressed person herself is kind of a dead-end case. Clearly, she doesn't get anywhere in this story, but most of us aren't her. We know that in most cases, depression is quite treatable. Big fan of Searchline. It's a common opinion that narcissism, unlike depression, isn't treatable. But the idea that narcissists as a whole can't change is false. In his book, Rethinking Narcissism, Dr. Craig Malkin writes, stripped down to its basic action, narcissism is a learned response, that is, a habit. And like any habit, it gets stronger or weaker depending on circumstances.
Yeah, I think the fancy Greek language makes people think it's like about your soul or something.
More than a dozen studies exploring whether or not narcissists can change have now been conducted, and they all point to the same conclusion. Encouraging narcissists to feel more caring and compassionate reduces their narcissism. One of the most insidious things about both narcissism and depression is the way they lock you into your U-box. And the key, I suppose, is just to break this cycle of self-loathing, break the cycle of staring at yourself in the lake and look around.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe so as not to miss the next video, and consider becoming a patron. And here are some lovely people who have done so.
No free clout. That was cool. That was really cool. Great video, Anya Turnbull. Very interesting points and well presented. I think we might be done for the night. And yeah, this is all for tonight and today and this video. So I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Oh, I should have said this in the beginning. Go check out the full version of this video if you actually want to watch a 2.5 hour version of this, because you're like, no, this is not long enough. An hour and 40 minutes or whatever it turns out to be. It's not long enough. An hour 50. It might turn out to be 2 hours. If you were like, oh no, I want to watch a longer version, you know, also doesn't have these interludes, but it's like, you know, more of the good stuff, of all the reactions you could possibly imagine, then you can check that out. I'm gonna post that to the Patreon and for YouTube channel members, so it's like a $1 or $2. And you know, I like to do extra stuff like that, just go above and beyond for people. What can I say? All in all, the way YouTube talks about mental health, this was sort of a, like I said, a little bit of a jagged slapdash survey, you know, of the YouTube sphere. So it's not like a whole analysis of everything on YouTube about mental health. It's just sort of what I found in a span of time being someone I am interested in mental health. And there's a lot of stuff. I mean, you just have to be discerning, and like if you resonate with this super spiritual stuff, then you're gonna like be shown more of that content and find more of that to enjoy. So I guess you should always try to balance and try to like stay out of, you know, being too much pigeonholed by your interests. You know, you always want to, you should never be afraid of losing your interests. You can push outside of your comfort zone with your interests and, you know, expand your perspective on your interests, and you know, just find ways to not just go down the rabbit hole, so that you can try to get a little bit of a broader array. I think in this video today we did a good job of looking at a bunch of different videos. I did a good job, you know, so I looked at a bunch of videos of sort of different types, more empirical, more spiritual, more, those psychology tricks were so wild. I don't even know what to call this. So yeah, a lot of different stuff, everything you could ever, you know, it's like Bo Burnham says, a little bit of everything all the time, right? The internet's got it all. So just always be aware of that, and be aware it's going to feed you whatever it thinks you want. So you have to keep it on its toes and always want different things, and kind of confuse the internet is what I think. Okay, signing off. Goodbye. Check out the other videos. Check out the main channel. Okay, bye.